Nick, what is the first thing you want to know?
Okay. I want to know, how did you overcome the fear, if you had any, of selling your first product?
Okay, fear is such an interesting topic related to anything, but especially related to selling. So I don't necessarily know. I don't remember specifically having a ton of fear, but there certainly was uncertainty, and probably on some level I had fear and just kind of blocked it out or, whatever. But I guess before I get deeper into my answer, I'm curious, in your mind, whether specifically to you or other people, what do you think the fear is, or what would you be afraid of when it comes to selling a product? What are those?
So there's kind of two. The first one gets to the next two questions. So I won't,
Mhm.
kind of the imposter,
Okay.
cheesy fakeness stuff. But I guess also, you know, just is this, am I worthy of selling something to somebody? Right.
Mhm.
And what if no one buys it? Of course, everyone has that kind of in the background. Like, I've been working toward this so hard. And if no one likes it, what does that mean? So kind of, I guess, though, that along the lines of, what if it doesn't sell? And then also the next two questions really answer, like, how do you sell something without feeling cheesy and fake? But I
Mhm.
think we'll get to that.
Okay. So let's start with the sort of result piece, right? So the what if it doesn't sell, right? And if you examine which by the way, I still have to this day when I release a new product, right? So let me back up and say the first product that I remember selling online that was sort of my own creation was I had a blog called Connected Comedy that was designed to help comedians grow their audience and sort of learn how to use social media. This was a long time ago. This was probably 2009, 2008 ish, a very simpler world. So even trying to sell a product online, there weren't things like Gumroad. Like it wasn't even as simple as it is now to just logistically sell stuff. But I remember that the first product I created, and I did have those feelings of like, I don't know, who's going to buy for me? And what do I like? I don't have a big audience and, whatever. But the first product I ever sold was I literally had a Microsoft Word document that I converted into a PDF. And I think it was called like 99 places to promote your comedy content. And it was literally a list of websites, message boards, communities. You're a comedian, you made a funny video. Here are places you can go to post it, to share it. A list of sort of those websites and communities, message boards, and a sentence or two description of each one. That was it. I don't know. Maybe it was 20 pages. I don't remember how long it was, but it wasn't anything complicated. And I sold it. I think I offered it for like $10. And I certainly was not getting rich on it. And I didn't have thousands. I don't even think I had hundreds of sales, but a few people bought it. And I do remember those first sales, not only feeling good, but also feeling like, oh, this is possible. I think that was the
Mm.
big lesson to me. Like, it didn't matter if it was hugely successful or not. What mattered was like, I made a thing, I put it out there, and somebody bought it, which means it's possible, right? I may not have figured out how to do this. It may not be the greatest product in the world, whatever, but it's possible. And that was super encouraging to me. I think my bar, and I think this speaks to fear, right? My bar for success or failure of that product was incredibly low. It just proved that it was possible, right? I had taken that, I had taken that first step. A couple other things, and these are sort of universal things that I think can help relieve some of those fears of what if it doesn't work, and also some of the insecurity about maybe who am I to be selling something, right? If you're starting out, like if you think about that product, I wasn't actually selling my expertise. That was a curated product. People weren't paying for me, even though I had expertise and was blogging and everything every day. And I didn't think about this at the time, but I think about it now looking back. It's very interesting that my first product was not, hey, buy an ebook where I'm telling you all of my, it wasn't that. It was like, hey, here's a bunch of resources that I put together to make it easier for you to find this stuff. So I think for people that are maybe insecure about selling stuff, the imposter syndrome piece, one of the easy ways to start is maybe your first product is curated, right? Maybe it's, you're not necessarily selling your own expertise. I'm not suggesting you don't, but I'm suggesting in terms of your own fears, you may have less fear of curating other stuff. And there's lots of different ways to do that, right? You know, you could have a product where maybe instead of a 1 hour video or course about you teaching stuff, you could interview 3 experts, compile it into a quote unquote course. And it's, you just pulled together 3 experts sharing their expertise. So I think the first thing is understanding that your product doesn't necessarily have to just be your own expertise. The other thing, and this is another big one, is it's, you know, the fear of something failing or not selling. It didn't matter if it failed. I knew that this was going to be a success for me no matter what, because even if nobody bought it or 2 people bought it, the process of doing it forced me to learn how to sell something. It forced me to learn how do I turn a Word document into a PDF? How do I upload a PDF to a site where it can be sold? How do I write a sales page? Like there's so much value that you can get from a project unrelated to the outcome, which you don't control, right? I knew that even if I sold nothing, I was going to learn a lot from it. And so I think when you frame the selling of something or anything you do for that matter in that way, it removes a lot of those fears because it removes a lot of the risk. I'm going to get value out of this regardless. The other thing I would say is, especially when it comes to selling something, you know, there's really nothing to fear because your costs are relatively low. I'm talking about information products. It's different if you're like, I'm going to go build an electric car and I hope people buy it, right? That's a whole other thing. But if you're talking about information products and your expertise, if it completely flops and nobody buys it, the worst that happens is it costs you the time it took to make it and maybe a little ding to your ego, right? But the failure's not that bad. The thing you're so worried about, worst case scenario, isn't really bad. And on the sort of who am I to be doing this side, right? Or the criticism side, which is sort of what you're afraid of. If nobody buys it and nobody sees it, nobody's going to criticize you and tell you that it sucks, right? So the thing you're afraid of is like, oh, on both sides, like you're worried about this failure, but the failure is not actually going to cost you that much. You're going to learn something, even if it doesn't work. I always say this about even free content too, right? Like you might as well experiment and put stuff out there, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because nobody saw it. And so in order for people to see it, it will have worked and people will have bought it. So I think all of those things hopefully can help reduce some of those fears. And I know we can, in these next questions, get a little more into sort of some of the imposter stuff.